One of the things that most people don't realize is, it's a issue I call suddenly single. And, we go into retirement. A lot of us go into retirement together. And it's just highly unlikely that the two of you are going to pass at the same time. The older you get, the odds of that get smaller and smaller and smaller. And there's a few things that happen when your spouse passes away, and one of the realities, the harsh realities, is you're suddenly in a single filer tax rate, which changes your situation dramatically, and you're probably inheriting all of their retirement account, which you still have this potentially large or some amount of retirement assets that you have to deal with from a tax efficient planning point of view or distribution point of view, and it makes things more challenging. But what are some of the other things that you run across that we should be paying attention to when we're dealing with a couple who walk into the office or meet us across the Zoom or the webcam?
Well, you touched on something interesting there, which is the penalty that the IRS imposes upon you at the probably the most tragic moment of your life is when your
Yeah.
spouse dies. I remember I was in a maybe it was an Uber or what have you on the way to a meeting, and the guy found out I was in the financial services industry, and he was very proud of what he'd been able to save, and so he sort of started, telling me and very um, and he's very proud. I mean, he's proud of and he should have been because he had accumulated a fair amount of money. And he started telling me about what he had. He had like, I think $1.5 million, and he was invested in, I think just index funds. And
Mhm.
he painted a pretty rosy picture. And he said, I don't think I should be doing anything differently. I've talked to a lot of different financial advisors that I've given rides to before. And I tell them, it's evident that he'd told all of these financial advisors, and none of them had really said that he should change anything. And so he was very confident that he had things. I said, well, the one thing that you may want to consider is a Roth conversion, because he was currently in the 10% tax bracket, a very modest
Oh,
lifestyle.
yeah.
I said, you may want to think about a Roth conversion, because guess what happens if either you or your spouse dies? You're going to be automatically catapulted into the 22 or 24% tax bracket just immediately overnight. Congratulations, your spouse died. Now we're going to double your tax rate. So why not take advantage of doing Roth conversions at the very least to the top of the 12% tax bracket? Don't let a year go by where you're not taking advantage of at least to the top of the 12% tax bracket while you're married. You've got such a modest lifestyle. Why not at least do that amount of converting? And had he been in the 22% tax bracket, I could very easily make the case that when his spouse died, he was going to go up into the 32, 35, or even
Sure.
37% tax bracket. So even the most reassured retiree who feels like they've done everything along the way is going to be absolutely clotheslined when their spouse dies, and they get catapulted into it's what we call tax bracket compression. They're
Mhm.
gonna they're gonna find that their tax bracket shrinks, or the threshold. They're going to arrive at that threshold of the next tax bracket twice as quickly as they otherwise would. And so, even if you feel like you're in a great position, you've done everything perfectly, if you haven't considered doing a Roth conversion, there could be catastrophic consequences, because you may think, hey, I don't even need the money. I'm going to live on a pension and Social Security. Well, guess what? The IRS doesn't care if you need the money, because they're going to force you to take the money out. And if
That's
they
right.
force you to take that money out and you have to realize that income at double the tax rate where you are today, you will look back in time and say, why did I not take advantage of tax rates while they were historically low? Why did I let a single year go by where I didn't at least max out? If you're in the 10 or 12, max out the 12. If you're in the 22 or 24, max out the 24. That makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, and the rules just get more complex. Beyond tax compression and the suddenly single penalty, the rules have gotten so much more complex about what happens when you inherit an IRA, whether it's from your spouse or whether it's from your a non-spouse. One of the things that I'm running into often is, as I'm having conversations with folks, they say, and I'll probably inherit, $500,000 or so from my father's IRA. Well, I hit the brakes at that point and I say, would your father have a conversation with the three of us, the group of us? Because if you inherit that $500,000 or $1 million or any part of that IRA, your tax efficient strategy here has got a real road bump in it, right, David? So you cannot convert an inherited IRA. You can give it away to charity and things like that, but at a certain age, but you cannot convert that money. So I'm seeing a lot of that, and I'm trying to pull the parents in, saying, just like you were saying, you think about the generation above the baby boomer generation. Some of them are still putting their cash in envelopes, at the beginning of the week, and spending very frugally, and they're taking out their RMDs and donating it right to the church or to their or to whatever charity drives them. And I'm just thinking of one fella. I said, well, your father at least should be doing qualified charitable distributions instead of taking that into your checking account and giving it to the church. So he was happy about that. And that was kind of the door or the kick of the door that opened up the discussion. But folks out there listening, if your parents have some savings and you're going to be inheriting an IRA, while that may sound like a good thing, you want to have a conversation with your parents, because if you're coming down this road, you're listening to Dave, you're listening to other YouTubers, or not that you're a YouTuber, Dave, but you know what I'm saying, and reading books and doing all the right things and going down this path. Don't let that be a hurdle for you. I understand that sometimes the generation before us may not want to have that discussion. Sometimes things are kept close to the vest, but if you can talk to your parents about maybe doing a Roth conversion with those funds, it's going to save you a lot of headache.
And just to add to that, Mark, there's two types of people generally that inherit these IRAs. The first one is a bit of a spendthrift. Mm-hmm. And so what they do is they inherit $1 million, and it's, easy come, easy go. So they this is money that I didn't have to work for. So they spend it all in 2 or 3 years. They realize it as income on top of all of their other income. So now they're paying at a higher marginal tax rate at a time in the future when tax rates are likely to be dramatically higher than they are today. So that's the first type. The second type says, I don't even need the money. I'm just going to let that money grow and compound, and then they forget about it. Because remember, there's no RMDs on that money. You just have to realize it as income within 10 years. So what do they do? Or what do I predict that's going to happen? They're just going to forget about it. And then in that 10th year, they're going to get a letter from the IRS that says, you haven't realized any of this income now. So now that $1 million has grown to $3 million. And now you have to realize it all as income in that 10th year. And that's going to be right on top of all your other income at a point in the future when tax rates are likely to be higher than they are today. Very rarely will you come across someone who understands it and stays on top of it and says, I'm going to take out 1/10 per year, right? Over the next 10 years, so I can minimize you spread that tax obligation out over the 10 years. So you're either going to get the spendthrift or the person that forgets about it. So this has all the makings of a tax catastrophe for people who have not done a Roth conversion before they die.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure. And and if you're in the baby boomer generation, you don't want to do that to your own kids, So think about the pain that could cause you by inheriting these funds. Listen, that sounds silly saying, well, the pain that's involved in inheriting these funds, but use Dave's example. You inherit $500,000. 10 years later, you have to realize that distribution, there is one RMD, right? That 10, let me back up. If the person who, just for clarification, just because I said there's one RMD, if the person who you inherited the IRA from was over their required beginning date, you will have RMDs along the way. But if that's not the situation, it has to be distributed by that 10th year. You have at least one, let me put it that way, one RMD. $500,000 at just a 7% interest rate is going to just about double during that time. So that's nearly $1 million. All has to be distributed, realized as ordinary income. Well, it's interesting because the proposal that came out of the White House in March, if you make over $1 million in a year at this proposal, what's your capital gains rates tax? 44.6%. Now, I don't think that's going to go through, but if anytime soon, but that's what we're probably looking at for the future. So suddenly, if you have $1 million realization, there's nothing you can do about it. You have to take it out. And you happen to also sell your NVIDIA stock, which, you've held for the last X number of years. That's not a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold NVIDIA. I'm using it as an example. Holy cow, you could have to give up 44.6% of that gain if that's the tax code at the time. So it really could be painful to inherit that money if it's not done the right way. So
Yeah.
talk to your parents.
Yeah.
Go
So,
ahead.
just in summary, for those of you out there who are in the 10 or 12% bracket and you're like, I'm never going to be in any bracket other than the 10 or
Right.
12, even if that were true, how would you feel if you died and then your heirs, your kids, are forced to realize, taxes on all of those assets at double the rate on top of all their other income? So even if you feel like you'll never be in higher than 12, it could make sense to take advantage of the 22 and 24 because it's still likely to be lower than what your kids are going to be paying. Now, a lot of people say, well, I'm going to bounce the check to the undertaker. I'm going to spend every last
Mhm.
dollar before I die.
Mhm.
Well, that's not always the case. In fact, most of the case, it's not. You're not going to automatically reach retirement and adopt a rock star lifestyle. A lot of these people are leaving lots of money to the next generation. They're not spending the money.
Yeah.
They're not automatically augmenting their lifestyle just because they're retired. So this is a real problem, and there's trillions of dollars that are about to, go from one
Mhm.
generation to the next. And honestly, the Roth conversion is the single greatest tool
Mhm.
that's available to you today to be able to maximize the amount of money that your kids are going to be able to spend.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the last time we had this conversation on your podcast, I called it the gift that the IRS gave us because there are no speed limits. We set our own speed limits on it. And that could likely change too in the future. And you have to take advantage of it. I often use that. This really plays back to the higher tax rate, but you've heard me say it before, Dave. I remember during the pandemic filling up my gas hungry F-150 pickup truck at $1.85 a gallon and standing there while I'm filling up, daydreaming that, boy, if I could have all of the gas I'm ever going to use for the rest of my life at $1.85 a gallon, I'd lock it in right now. I would pay that. I'd write a check right now. That's our situation with our tax rates. No doubt about it.
Great analogy. Folks, my upcoming book, The Guru Gap, How America's Financial Gurus Are Leading You Astray and How to Get Back on Track, is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Take the opportunity to order your copy today. Also, in the next 10 years, I'm looking to put 1 million Americans on the road to the 0% tax bracket. If you would like some help implementing a balanced, comprehensive approach to tax-free retirement that shields you from the impact of higher taxes down the road, head on over to davidmcknight.com and click on the Connect with an Advisor button. I'm happy to refer you to an advisor in the Power Zero network that has been trained, vetted, and qualified personally by me. If you're a financial professional and want to learn how to become a certified Power Zero advisor, head over to powerzero.com and opt into my free video series. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them into the comments section below. I'll respond to every single one of them personally. And don't forget to click like, subscribe, and the bell so you never miss a video. This is David McKnight. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.